Okay, I'm Joyce and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is July 19th, 1986. And I'm so honored to be here. It's so cool seeing all these folks from all over, everywhere. Jay called me and asked me if I would like to speak, and of course I would not like to speak. I hate it. But I learned one thing in AA: when anybody reaches out for an AA purpose, we say yes no matter what. And I got over it one time by realizing that if my story helps one person, then my mission is accomplished. Uh, currently live in Tupelo, Mississippi. I came here about 5 years ago from Texas. Uh, and my home group, they're real sticklers about that here in Mississippi. You got to name your home group. And my home group here is We Are Not Saints. And I do have a living sponsor. The reason I say that because I've been around so long, many of my sponsors have passed away. Uh, but I like learning from older, smarter people. And one of my sponsors in Texas, she knew Bill Wilson. I mean, that'll give you a clue how old she is and how old I am. Uh, at a meeting we had last week at my home group, I was so impressed with the fellow that was leading the meeting. He had typed up a sheet of why do old timers still come to meetings, and I'm like, how sweet that he put so much thought into it. Well, it's like that's how AA works. We only keep our sobriety by helping others. Uh, I went to a meeting this morning and I told the girls, I said, I was getting dressed this morning and I said, AA is like, I have some projects I'm working on at home, and it's like, Joyce, go and read the directions. And that to me is how AA works. We have to periodically go back to the book and read the directions because we forget, especially at our age. Uh, so I was supposed to tell what it was like, what happened, and what it is like now. Uh, I was so entertained by Sharon and Irwin from Montana because I was born in Montana. My dad worked. I have a cat that's bothering me. Sorry. My dad worked for an oil company, and we traveled all over. From he would be somewhere for 6 months and then go somewhere else for 6 months, and so that's how I happened to be born in Montana. And my dad and my birth mother, they had myself, and then I have two real brothers. And the reason I tell the family story because this is a family disease, and I came from a very dysfunctional family. Uh, so my birth mother, she dropped me and my two brothers off at my aunt's doorstep. I was about 3. My younger brother, was about 1, and we never saw her again. And then my father, he came and got us, so I was raised by my father. Well, when I was in the first grade, my dad met this woman, and she became our wonderful stepmother. And I don't know if any of y'all have had bad experience with step parents. Well, she was a witch, but she taught me how to work the steps. I mean, because of her, I had to work the steps. Uh, so after my dad married my stepmother, she had 2 kids, and then when they got together, they had 2 more kids. So that's a total of 7 kids. So you can understand how it is being raised with 7 kids. To this day, I don't like stale bread. Uh, so I think it was pretty typical childhood. I did all the things. I learned at a very young age. I did not want to be in the house with my stepmother, so I stayed outside all the time. One time I broke my arm, and I had to go to dinner, and she's like, move your arm. And I couldn't move it. I had broken it, but I had just come in to put a Band-Aid on it. But I wasn't going to tell her anything. But then as life progressed and hormones progressed, I discovered boys in high school. And needless to say, at the age of 16, I got pregnant. And you know, we're so ignorant, you know, uneducated. I was 5 months pregnant before I even knew I was pregnant. And I didn't know what to do. And it got to where I couldn't hide it anymore. So my father said, well, what do you want to do? And I knew for one thing for a fact that a child of mine was never going to have a step parent. So I told him I wanted to put her up for adoption. So he took me to the Methodist home for unwed mothers in New Orleans. And I saw we have somebody from New Orleans on here. So anyway, I had a beautiful, healthy young girl, and but people don't realize once you put up a baby for adoption, the hole it tears inside of you. I cried all the way home, just boohooing. Well, then we were at Hattiesburg at that point in time. So then I moved from, and I did not finish high school. So I moved from Hattiesburg to Jackson, Mississippi. And I started working at the Clarion Ledger. That doesn't mean anything to y'all. But I started working at the Clarion Ledger, and then I also started working at night at the Hatton Cane Bar as a bar waitress. I met this boy in the bar, and he was only drinking water. And I said, that man is the man for me. Needless to say, he introduced me to drugs. But I knew that because my father's an alcoholic, and I didn't want to have anything to do with anybody that was an alcoholic. So anyway, because of that boyfriend, I caught he and another guy shooting drugs with a needle, and I said, I want no part of this. So me and my 1964 Buick Deuce and a Quarter Electra moved from Jackson, Mississippi back to Austin, Texas. That car and 12 quarts of oil. I was going back to Texas because that's where my aunt lived, and she was the source of my unconditional love, and I knew that I would have a home there. So when I got to Texas, I started working for the only land developer in Austin, Texas, and I was 19. And but I learned the power of working and having a career, and that if I did very well in that job, and I moved up the ladder. And some of the girls I remember talking about back behind my back used to call me the slave driver because my thought was like, if you're here, you're supposed to work. And I had learned the power of, let me back up, like when I was in Mississippi, I discovered that because of the pain in me, I discovered like alcohol and drugs that was the solution to life because that took the pain away. And then also in Texas, I discovered certain drugs I could work all night long. Back then, we didn't have computers, and I would do like a 10-year cash flow projection on a subdivision and stay up all night, and I could get it done. Just give me a little more of whatever I needed. So I did very well. We also during that time I learned how to party. I worked hard, but I partied just as hard. And then that started my next career of men. My first husband, he was a wonderful, wonderful man, and he is still to this day. But it got to where I didn't want to go home at night. I would go to the bar versus going home. And it's no fault of his, but it was just I had some, I guess, what they call emotional issues. I'd rather be at the bar. So I did that that was my solution, was just to drink it away, work and drink, work and drink. And then as it progressed, after that divorce, I met another man, and I know we're not supposed to talk about drugs in AA, but he introduced me to the power of other drugs. And also, I'm a real sick Al-Anon. He overdosed at my house, and I thought, well, if I call the ambulance on him, he's going to be upset with me. Well, that relationship didn't work out very well. But at the same time, I was going through that relationship with that man. My family from Arkansas, my dad had retired in Arkansas. My family called and said, "Is your father with you?" And I said, "No, he's not with me." And they couldn't find my father. Well, he had become a raging alcoholic and in a bad way. Uh, so finally they found him, and he was in jail in Arkansas. And he said, "I like it here. They feed me 3 meals a day." And so that started my father's sort of like we knew that he needed help. He was a real alcoholic. So my boyfriend was overdosing. My dad was an alcoholic, and so finally I said, "I think I need some help." So I went and talked to a therapist, and she said, "Joyce, I think you need to go to AA." And I said, "No, I don't need AA." I said, "I drink scotch. I don't drink vodka. Those real alcoholics drink vodka, and I only drink scotch." So she said, "Well, just go to AA and give it 30 days and see how you do." Well, I did not succeed. I could not quit. Uh, so but I was struggling. Without the drugs and the alcohol, you just cannot cope with life. And my aunt thought I was having a nervous breakdown, which I might have been. But so I was going to AA, and I heard this lady talk about in a meeting about her higher power, and she had this higher power that would carry her burdens, and I'm like, "You mean God will do that for you?" Because I was carrying the burdens of the whole world on my shoulders. And so I said, I've got to have this God. I mean, I was just so, I guess I never, all I knew about church was like when I got pregnant when I was a teenager, I went to the little Baptist church in Hattiesburg and confessed to a lady what had happened. And the next day it was all over the neighborhood. Uh, so I learned that church wasn't the solution. But anyway, that day in AA, I was sitting in the parking lot, and I literally heard God tell me that He loved me. I mean, people say you don't hear God, but I heard God. And it just like, whoa, man. So I called my so-called Christian friend because she used to holler and scream at her children, and she had stopped because she had found Jesus. So I said, "Well, I need help." So she said, "Come over to my house on Saturday morning, and I'll help you." So I go over there, and she said, "What do you know about Jesus?" And this is how my life has worked. It's like that morning before I woke up, when I woke up, I turned the TV on, and the first words on the screen were Jesus. And so I told my friend, I said, "Well, all I know about Jesus is about that movie I saw this morning." So anyway, that started. So my mind said, if I have God, then I don't need AA. Well, the church people do not understand we AA people at all. So that didn't last very long. So in the meantime, like here, my father, who's the real alcoholic, we finally got him signed up to go to treatment in La Hacienda in Texas. So we got him in treatment, and then they called, and I went for family week. So while I was in family week, uh, they started having these classes, grief and loss and so forth, and I couldn't handle it because you're supposed to be sober when you're there. Uh, so I would just stay in the room and hide out. And finally, the family therapist there came and said, "Joyce, we think you need to check in." And I'm like, "Okay." So I said, "If insurance pays for it, I'll check in." So my dad and I went to treatment together. It's not a very good solution. He'd say, "Leave that boy alone, leave that boy alone." So my father, that was May of '86, and my father stayed sober ever since that day. in '86. But the problem was he drank too much too long, and he became wet brain. And people that aren't familiar with wet brain or alcohol dementia, it's horrible, absolutely horrible. So here was this man that was my everything, because he was smart, good looking, and then he just pretty much became an idiot. And the last 20 years of his life, I took care of him. But that's okay. I mean, that I was glad to do that versus him have that stepmother up in Arkansas, because she was the kind, she wouldn't get any of his prescriptions refilled. Uh, so anyway, he moved to Texas and he left everything in Arkansas behind, and he never turned back. Uh, so we had some struggles, but I found him. I put him in a nursing home, which we had to, and so uh, he's a big part of my story. So anyway, what happened was therapy wasn't working, church wasn't working, the boyfriend wasn't getting better, and I was just dying inside. And that void that they talk about inside, I needed help. So finally, I went to the AA. We had a big AA club in Austin, Texas, and it was open like 24 hours, and they had a car. I don't know if any of y'all have ever been to it was a nice club. But the only person I liked there, we had this big, fat, ugly janitor, and he's the only one I felt safe around. So finally, I told him, I said, Monroe, I need help. I said, I'm willing to do whatever you tell me to do. So he said, Joyce, go sit on that couch and join us. And I sat on that couch, and that was my sobriety day, July 19th, 1986. And I've been sober ever since then. And, it's just amazing once you actually do join AA and become a part of it. It's a way of life. They said, change your playground and your playmates. And, I mean, what do you mean? I said, part of my job is drinking. We entertain and blah, blah, blah. Well, I had to give it all up. I gave it all up. And I gave up the corporate life, and I started cleaning houses to pay the electric bill, because I could not live the corporate life in that lifestyle. But AA stuck, and we did back then. We did like 3 meetings a day. At the meeting I was at this morning, some of the girls kept talking about their slips and their relapses, and I'm like, you need more meetings. You need to make AA. You gotta get it out of your head and into your heart. It's a way of life. You don't ever quit AA, and you don't ever graduate. Uh, Oh, so let me back up a little bit. So then after I got into AA, they say, don't quit before the miracles. Well, we don't know what the miracles are. Well, that little girl I put up for adoption called me in 1996, and we became reunited. And let me tell you, that was a blessing for me, because one prayer I'd had my whole life was that I'd be a grandmother. Well, that was never going to happen because I didn't have any children, and I wasn't going to have any children because they weren't going to have a step parent. Well, so anyway, this little girl called me, and once we met, we became like glue. We were best of friends. But she lived in Mississippi, and I lived in Texas. Well, now, thanks. Talk about the miracles. Let me tell you, like, because of her, I have 4 grandchildren and 6 great grands, and that's why I'm in I'm in Tupelo. So, but the sad part is, just a second. In 2015, she was killed in a car accident, and and but I had her in my life for 20 years, and her husband used to say, he's going, I can't take two of y'all because we did everything alike. We thought alike. We everything was alike. And she was my buddy. Uh, and the beautiful story is like the name I gave her on her birth certificate was Alicia Renee. Well, you know, when she got her adopted parents, they renamed her, but her first child she named Alicia. You know, it's a beautiful story. Uh, sorry, I didn't think I was going to have any tears, but that's part of life. So, and that's one of the miracles. I mean, I'm glad I had her the time I did have her, and but that's why I was motivated to come to Mississippi is for the grandkids. But I couldn't leave Texas because I still had my dad I took care of and my aunt who was my everything. And so my aunt passed away, and my dad finally I gave up. I said he's never going to pass away. the the heart doctor and I decided on the last surgery not to give him a defibrillator because so anyway, like but anyway, I came to Tupelo and I was searching for houses, and then I started searching for nursing homes. And that trip on the way home, I went to Hattiesburg to see my little brother, and they called me that day and said, "Your father's not going to make the night." And I said, "I'm on my way." So I drove to Texas all night, and he passed. But it gave me permission to leave Texas and come to Mississippi. And one of my uh, priest friends, he's from a 12-step retreat. Because I told him, I said, I'm torn, you know, I have my obligation here in Texas, but I have my family in Mississippi. And he said, Joyce, go where there's life. And I said, okay, I'm going to go where there's life. And let me tell you, these little children here, they call me Meemaw, and it's just absolutely beautiful. But let me back up some. I'm not a speaker, y'all. I told Jay I'm not a speaker, but I love AA and I love the steps. So I always like to talk about the steps. Because my one sponsor that from Texas that is still living, uh, he took me through the steps like I've never seen. It's just miraculous results from it. And what I'm doing with the girls here in Tupelo now is we have two old boys that used what they call the California solution on the steps, and I said, well, we have the Texas solution, so we're combining it and making it a Mississippi solution for the steps. But like step one is easy; it's just simply help. You know, step two, God. I love God. I mean, I just a while ago I got off the screen because I forgot to get on my knees before I spoke, and I asked God to guide everything I say because on my own I can't do it, but with His help I can do anything. He's my source, and He's my unconditional love. And the third step I do every day in the shower. I do it every day, and I try to teach the girls that I help. Like you need to memorize that and say it with meaning. One girl, I mean, we did it at my house here recently, and let me tell you, the room filled up. I mean, with just God's love, and the thing was, my dog came up in between us, and I told her, I said, I don't know if you got any help, but my dog did. But you got the third step is where you make a decision. You turn your life over to the care of God, because in the big book it talks about we want to run the show. Oh Lord, I ran the show for so many years, and that's why it wore me out because I was the boss. I knew best. I had the right answer to everything. Well, in AA we learn we're not the boss. There's only one ultimate authority, a loving God. Uh, so anyway, back up to so on the fourth step, my sponsor, it was a guy, of course, because I had problems with women. Uh, when I did my fourth step, I was talking about my stepmother. And so, you know, you list your defects, and I said, I hate her. He said, Joyce, hate is not a character defect. And I said, I'm not taking that word off this sheet of paper. I hate her and I will always hate her. So he said, oh, we got to work on this one. So he spent, I remember to this day, 3 hours on this one lady on my fourth step, fifth step. So finally, after he finally got me to see where I blamed the woman for everything that had happened in my life, which, I mean, it's true. To give you a small example, my little brother, who's precious to me, her son, one Christmas, she gave her son a train set and gave my little brother a pair of house shoes. Well, Joyce, who does not know how to keep her mouth shut, even as a kid, was not going to have that. And I remember my dad trying to make me apologize to her, and I said, I'm not apologizing to her. I said, just keep beating me. And I said, I'm not going to apologize. Well, that was our relationship. So she and I just pretty much avoided each other at every passing turn. And she was horrible. And other people that know her, even her kids, talk about how bad she was. Uh, so anyway, my sponsor, he said, no, we got. So he finally got me to see my part in it. And I blamed her. I did blame her. I blamed her for my daddy's drinking. I blamed her for all of us kids being mistreated. So anyway, after I did that fifth step with my sponsor, it was that night. I remember like in bed, and I remember just sitting up in bed, and somebody had in my dream or my vision, whatever, had cut the back of my thigh and pulled out this cactus branch that just had fester just dripping from this. So anyway, I sat up on the bed and complete total peace came over me. I mean, it's just when you have experiences like that, it's like these steps, I mean, it just sends chills because all that hate was removed from me. All that bitterness. It was totally removed. And it's just so anyway, getting on down the steps, uh I told my sponsor, I said, you mean I gotta make amends to the bitch? And he said, yeah. uh he said, even though you don't like her, you know. So anyway, I mean, I worked on it and I prayed about it. Finally, I went to her and I apologized to her for my part in our relationship. Uh, and the bitch apologized for her part. And I'm like, that's a miracle. So after that, it made me like try to understand why she was so sick. So I got to digging into her history, and then I understood what made her such a bitter woman. And that's true with anybody in our lives. There's something going on. I was telling a girl today, I said that you need to use the sick man prayer on that one. These girls here in Tupelo, I'm old, and the computers are new to me, and the phone and the apps. Here recently they taught me about the Everything AA app. Well, I have had more fun with that. I mean, where I've been sending them like the daily reflections to wake them up. I'm like, this is the issue you were talking about the other day, and it's on the daily reflections today. So I mean, I like the app. That's a new thing for me from I see Dana laughing. uh, so anyway, I was going, like going down the list. We it's all about the steps. The bottom line is the steps. Uh, but why do we keep coming to meetings? Because, like I said, we're never ever going to get it. And it's all about helping one another. I mean, all my friends in my life today are AA friends. It's just there's no other way. How much more time do I have, Jay? Okay. Uh, all I can say is I love AI. I have 20 minutes. I can't fill up 20 minutes. Oh, all I can say is like, let me just give you an example. Like, oh, I know what I was going to talk about. Talking about some of my relationships. My last husband, he and I were friends for in AA for 25 years, and he passed away. Uh, but it's like every relationship I have is somehow AA related. It's just you make lifelong friends forever and ever, and you'll never leave them. And one of my good friends, her husband passed away last June, and she this August she's taken me on a trip overseas, all expenses paid. I mean, and that's it's just the miracles of AA. I mean, uh, ever since I joined AA, I mean, I remember like after I had given up that job, I was given places to live at no charge. Uh, and I'm seeing some of the girls that I help here. One girl, I was shaking my head because I was picking her up and taking her to meetings because she didn't have a car. And I said, what is that? What are those cars across the street? Why are they watching us? She said, that's the DEA, the drug enforcement. And I'm like, whoa. And I'm like, here I am in Mississippi and it's another world. But let me tell you, all I can say is that girl, I think she had purple hair. I think Dana had blue hair when she started, but this girl had purple hair. And today she has 1 year and she is so proud of herself. But it's yeah, I mean that's why it works and that's why we keep coming to meetings. It's because you got to pass it on. One thing I wanted to share with y'all, like helping these girls, it forces you back in the book. And one girl I was helping this week, and we read this, and I'm like, oh man, that's so cool. And you know, if you don't read the big book, you forget. But it's on, I don't know what page because I'm on a different edition. On page 25, it says, the great fact is just this and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and toward God's universe. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we can never do by ourselves. And I mean, yeah, it's. I mean, I could read to y'all all night long, but what I'm getting at is like I've been around so long, and if you don't pick up your book and dust it off, you forget the treasures in here. And in Texas, we went to Joe and Charlie tapes, but they were in person. I think y'all just have the tapes now, but we did the Joe and Charlie studies, and it's just I mean, it's just absolutely amazing what's in this book. And then people will go, well, they're not religious. And I'm like, well, you know, you dumb shit. Everything that's in the big book came from the big book. And because I have some girls that have real problem with God. And I said, well, it's not the church God. It's a, you know, you just read it and you'll more and more will be revealed to you. Uh, since I've been in Mississippi, I have a little group. I lead this Bible study group, and it's just absolutely awesome. And Bill, the founders of our organization, talk about it. You know, it's a matter of combining it all, body, mind, and spirit, and we're concerned about the whole being. And some of these girls, I tell them, I'm like, you got to stop eating all that sugar. You know, I mean, But we flat out don't know how to live life until we get around people that have lived it and experienced it. And that's why I like the older people, because they've lived it and they know. How much more time, Dana? 10 minutes. Oh my gosh.
You, you've got about 11 minutes, Joyce, but if when you finish, you finish. You don't worry about the clock. Just don't
Yeah,
run over.
okay. Okay. I mean, all I can say is that AA is my whole life. Some people they say, why do you still go to those meetings? They don't get it. Well, the problem is those people out there in the world, they don't have a program. We in AA are fortunate to have a program, and I'm even talking about just the regular folks, the church folks. A lot of the church folks are saying we need those steps. And it's like, yeah, you do, because we get real honest with each other. In Texas, we used to say, sit down and shut up, and we need to do that more here. But that's how you learn. And I don't think we're even capable of learning until we sit down and learn how to listen and let other people love us like we love you. That's all, Jay. I'm done.
Yay. Thank you so much,